Medieval peasants slept in -20 degrees Fahrenheit weather with nothing but rags and straw, and if they screwed up even once, they'd be dead by morning. They invented survival tricks so brutal that modern people would rather freeze than try them. You think you're tough? You wouldn't last one night. What you're about to learn will make you realize that everything you think you know about cold weather survival is absolutely wrong. Medieval homes. Let's start with where they lived. I used to imagine medieval peasants throwing together flimsy wooden huts and hoping for the best. Turns out, I was way off. These people were basically early fans of underground living. In much of early medieval northern Europe, they'd build what archaeologists call sunken featured buildings, digging their homes 2 to 3 feet into the earth. Not exactly a bunker, but enough to make a real difference. Think of it like building your house in a shallow kiddie pool, only instead of beating the heat, they were trapping warmth. And it actually worked. Archaeological studies and modern reconstructions show these semi-buried homes could be several degrees warmer than above-ground huts in the dead of winter, sometimes up to 10 degrees in ideal conditions, though this varied with weather and soil type. These clever designs didn't stop at dirt either. Windows? Absolutely minuscule, just large enough to peek your head through, all to minimize drafts. Those low ceilings? Not just because folks back then were on average a little shorter, they were, but it was a deliberate heat-trapping move. Less space overhead meant less warmth lost, cozy efficiency at its finest. Wall building. So, how did medieval peasants keep the cold out? Meet wattle and daub. Wattle is just a bunch of sticks woven together like a rustic basket. Daub. That's where it gets interesting. It's a sticky blend of clay, straw, and yes, sometimes animal dung. That's right. Their walls were basically medieval compost. So if your room has a weird smell, at least your drywall didn't come from the barn. Surprisingly, it worked pretty well for the time. Modern tests on reconstructed wattle and daub walls show they provided decent insulation, better than bare logs or stone, though not quite what you'd call energy efficient by today's standards. More like gets the job done than rival modern fiberglass. The hearth. If there was an MVP of medieval home heating, it was hands down the central hearth. Not just a fireplace, it was their all-in-one oven, radiator, and medieval social media hub. Smack dab in the center, it handled dinner, warmth, and neighborhood gossip all at once. And you know what? Archaeologists measuring reconstructed medieval homes found that a well-tended hearth could keep the immediate area around 46 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit on a good winter day, though farther corners would definitely be colder. Sweater weather for us, total luxury for them. There's also a smoky side effect that actually helped. Hearth smoke floating up helped preserve thatch and repel bugs. While the exact lifespan benefits vary, historical records and modern testing show that well-smoked thatch does last longer than untreated roofing. Smart layouts. Peasants weren't just surviving, they were optimizing. Those one-room homes were practical masterpieces. Beds and sleeping spots were positioned away from doors and drafts. Roofs were angled steep enough for snow to slide off, but not so steep the thatch would slip right off too. In some regions, houses were angled to catch more winter sun, whether by deliberate planning or generations of trial and error. This passive solar heating really happened, particularly in places with harsh winters and south-facing slopes. And while the smoky air wasn't great for lungs, it genuinely did help keep insects and roof rot at bay. Not the best air quality by modern standards, but effective, and for many, worth the trade-off. Seasonal upgrades. Autumn meant annual maintenance, patching daub, re-thatching roofs, and sometimes hanging animal hides or extra cloth for additional insulation. Think wall hangings with a practical purpose. These winterizing routines, confirmed in manorial records across England and Europe, show folks prepared their homes systematically each year. The one-room design also meant all the bodies and activities helped keep it warmer. Smaller spaces meant less heat loss, and every person was like a human radiator. All these features came from generations of trial and error, with homes gradually evolving to handle chilly nights better and focus heat where families needed it most. The evolution. Early medieval homes were simple and rough. By the 13th to 14th centuries, though, designs had improved significantly. Better wattle and daub, thicker thatched roofs, strategically tiny windows, and solid doors. Those thick walls were actually breathable, letting moisture escape while holding heat in, sometimes better at resisting mold than some modern drywall. Ironically, their sharply pitched roofs handled heavy snow loads better than many modern buildings with flat roofs that sometimes collapse under the weight. Still, no system was perfect. Thatched roofs required constant upkeep, smoke could be a serious health hazard, and even the best hearth could leave icy drafts in the corners. But no heating bill, no thermostat battles, and everything built with survival in mind. Clockwork life. You might assume medieval families just woke with sunrise and improvised their day. Not the case. Life was carefully scheduled around sunlight and outdoor temperature, with critical tasks often timed for 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., what they called high sun, because it was warmest and safest for outdoor work. Major chores, repairs, and community gatherings happened during this golden window. Records from various manors describe penalties for skipping out on essential field labor during this crucial time. In some villages, failing to show up for work meant extra firewood duty for the community. Yes, work attendance directly influenced everyone's survival. The Frost Watch. Staying warm was always a group effort. Many villages organized rotating fire duties, with families taking turns to maintain communal hearths or ovens through the night. Manorial and church court records mention these rotating responsibilities, with penalties, usually in food or resources, for neglecting the communal fires. Some communities even developed warning systems using horns or bells for extreme cold snaps, though these weren't standardized across regions. Sleep, medieval style. Sleep wasn't like ours at all. Peasants followed what historians call segmented sleep. First sleep after dusk, wake up around midnight, maybe do a quiet chore or pray, visit neighbors, tend the fire, and then go back for a second sleep until dawn. This pattern is well documented in medieval manuscripts and chronicles. That midnight wake-up was genuine social time. People would relax, talk quietly, check on the hearth, or even visit neighbors. It seems weird to us, but it was completely normal and apparently healthy for them. Bread bells and heat hacks. Midday was main mealtime, not just because everyone was hungry, but because that's when communal ovens, which heated entire spaces, were at their hottest. Bread bells, or town criers, signaled when ovens were ready, no timers, just community coordination, and people wouldn't linger outside long in the bitter cold. These large ovens could warm their surrounding areas by several degrees, and crowding inside for cooking and eating was often as much about shared warmth as about dinner. Afternoons indoors. After high sun, work typically moved indoors. Some villages had people monitoring for early freezes, often using simple but effective methods like bowls of water placed outside. While not scientific meteorology, it was surprisingly practical for local conditions. Communities generally discouraged unnecessary outdoor work once temperatures dropped, though formal point systems for cold weather behavior varied widely by region and weren't universally documented. Twilight councils. Village meetings near sunset were common and practical. Even if the exact term, twilight councils, isn't always in historical records, gathering many people in the largest available house did help raise temperatures by a degree or two, boosting both morale and actual warmth. Scheduling important community discussions for the coldest nights? That was just smart resource management. Bedtime duties. The last family members awake had real rotating responsibilities to check hearths and make sure fires were safely banked for the night. Court and manor records do describe actual penalties for neglecting these duties, though the specific stories about dramatic punishments are sometimes more colorful than strictly documented. Still, fines and social consequences for fire negligence definitely happened because everyone's safety depended on it. Winter pantry strategy. Food storage was absolutely critical for survival. Underground pits, cellars, and other below-ground spaces helped keep food above freezing while staying below spoiling temperatures. These really were medieval refrigerators of sorts. Well-designed pits could maintain relatively stable temperatures around 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Archaeological sites across northern Europe, especially places like Yorkshire and northern France, are full of excavated root storage pits. While specific numbers varied widely between villages, most peasant households used some form of underground food storage. Vegetable monitoring. While there's no solid evidence medieval peasants literally used carrots as thermometers, they definitely observed closely how their stored vegetables were doing. Signs like frost damage or premature sprouting meant storage conditions needed adjustment. Medieval texts occasionally ranked different produce by storage hardiness, showing they understood which foods lasted longest under various conditions. Modern scientists studying these old techniques have been impressed by their practical effectiveness. Hay, and straw were stacked around food storage areas to create thermal barriers against the cold. Layering hay to create stable temperature zones is definitely authentic medieval practice. Modern reconstructions suggest each additional layer could buffer temperature swings, though exact measurements come from contemporary testing rather than medieval records. Using hay for both animal feed and insulation was essentially their winter insurance policy. The snow technique. Snow could be packed over storage pits for extra insulation, especially in harsher northern climates. Archaeological finds across northern Europe suggest winter snow cellars were real, and food stored this way could stay preserved for weeks into spring. While specific claims about duration vary by region and conditions, using snow as a natural preservation aid was definitely part of their toolkit. Underground storage 2.0. Some food storage pits had genuinely sophisticated features: basic drainage systems, separate chambers for different foods, and even simple ventilation shafts. These touches helped regulate both temperature and humidity, showing these weren't just holes in the ground, but carefully planned infrastructure. The fact that archaeologists have found viable ancient seeds in some of these sites shows just how effective the best storage systems could be. Medieval food management, efficient food rotation, moving produce between different storage sites as winter progressed, was essential, backed by manorial instructions about when to consume what foods. If someone let stored food spoil or failed to follow storage protocols, they might face extra community work or social consequences, though formal penalty systems weren't universal. The food testing system. Food safety testing did happen, though it was usually more informal than the dramatic "fool's test" stories suggest. Some records mention food sampling or testing, often done by community members on a rotating basis. The colorful anecdotes about people trying to dodge this duty with creative excuses are entertaining, but probably represent folklore mixed with occasional real incidents rather than systematic practice. Medieval food knowledge. Food preservation knowledge was carefully recorded and transmitted through oral traditions, notes in manor accounts, and systematic updates about what works. While they didn't have formal food science training, medieval communities kept remarkably detailed observations about storage and preservation techniques. Medieval winter cooking. Calories were absolutely king during winter months. For peasants doing hard physical labor in cold conditions, consuming 3,000 to 5,000 calories per day was often necessary, the higher numbers applying to the hardest working adult men. While they didn't count calories mathematically, they understood the connection between food intake and surviving the cold. This caloric requirement really did approach what modern Olympic athletes consume, though medieval peasants measured by hunger and energy levels rather than nutrition labels. Pottage. Long-simmered pottage really was a medieval staple, kept bubbling on the hearth day after day, with new ingredients added continuously. Evidence suggests some pots stayed on heat for days or even weeks, though exact durations varied by household and circumstances. This extended cooking method did help eliminate harmful bacteria, modern microbiologists confirm this, while making tough vegetables and grains more digestible and nutritious. Layered nutrition. Layering ingredients in pottage, starchy vegetables at the bottom for steady energy, legumes in the middle for protein, grains on top for quick energy, matches what we know from surviving medieval recipes across England and France. Chemical analysis of residues in ancient cooking pots shows these meals provided balanced nutrition with heavy carbohydrates, high fiber, and moderate protein. Pretty sophisticated for supposedly primitive cooking. Fermentation. Medieval fermentation was everywhere. Grains into nutritious ales, fruits into wines, vegetables into preserved foods that provided both calories and probiotics. Some winter brews were incredibly thick and calorie-dense, more like liquid food than what we'd call beer today. A hearty winter ale could easily contain 300 to 400 calories per pint, making it a substantial part of daily nutrition. The fermentation process also created B vitamins that helped fight off winter illnesses and maintained better overall health. Gut health. Modern analysis of preserved medieval remains shows remarkably diverse gut microbiomes, thanks to unprocessed foods, whole grains, and extensive homemade fermentation. They didn't plan it scientifically, but their digestive health was often superior to modern standards. While exact comparisons to modern fermented foods are difficult to quantify precisely, medieval diets definitely supported much more diverse gut bacteria than typical contemporary diets. Bread as survival food. Medieval bread bore little resemblance to our fluffy modern loaves. It was dark, dense, high fiber, and sometimes tough enough to double as a weapon. But this inferior bread was actually more nutritious than most modern varieties due to higher bran and germ content that their less efficient mills couldn't remove. Chemical analysis of preserved bread samples confirms they were getting significantly more nutrients per slice than we typically get from modern processed bread, even whole grain varieties. Winter cooking science. Medieval cooks discovered that longer cooking times for grains made them more digestible and released more available calories. Recipes describing grains cooked until soft as child's teeth might sound unappetizing, but they represent solid nutritional science. Modern analysis confirms that extended cooking breaks down complex starches, making calories more readily available for the body to use, crucial when every calorie counted for winter survival. Seasonal eating. Medieval diets shifted dramatically with the seasons. Records from manor courts show people consumed roughly twice as much fat and protein in winter compared to summer, not for health trends, but for pure survival. Guidance like, "When frost comes early, the pottage needs extra fat," captures the practical logic they developed over generations of experience. Strategic meal timing. Medieval meal timing followed a logical pattern. Substantial breakfast at dawn for energy to start the day warm, hearty midday meal during peak temperatures, and lighter evening meal to fuel overnight warmth. This schedule, documented in manorial and church records, aligns surprisingly well with what modern nutritionists recommend for energy management. They understood intuitively, if not scientifically, how to match food intake with their daily energy and warmth needs. Sleep arrangements. Medieval sleeping arrangements prioritized shared warmth over privacy. Archaeological evidence from the 1200s to 1300s shows entire families, often up to 6 people, sharing sleeping spaces on wooden platforms layered with straw and whatever fabric they owned. These crowded conditions weren't just about limited space, they were about survival. Modern studies confirm that shared body heat in confined sleeping areas can raise local temperatures significantly, sometimes making the difference between life and death during extreme cold snaps. The medieval sleep position. Archaeological research suggests medieval people often slept in semi-reclined positions rather than lying completely flat. Evidence from preserved bed platforms shows wear patterns consistent with elevated, angled sleeping. This position likely developed for practical reasons. It reduced cold air exposure, made it easier to fit more people in limited space, and may have helped with breathing in smoky environments. Modern sleep researchers have found this position can indeed help with circulation and warmth retention. Community sleep standards. While formal sleep inspectors are likely exaggerated, medieval communities did have social standards for efficient use of warming resources. Manor records occasionally mention penalties for wasteful heating practices or dangerous fire management, though these were usually informal community pressure rather than official enforcement. The basic principle was sound. When survival depended on shared resources, everyone had to contribute efficiently. Medieval bed engineering. Medieval bed platforms were more sophisticated than simple straw piles. Archaeologists have found evidence of layered construction, packed straw bases that were changed seasonally, wool layers when available, and fabric coverings. Many platforms were built at optimal heights, typically around 18 inches, that kept sleepers above the coldest floor-level air while still benefiting from rising heat from hearths or animals below. Some households even positioned sleeping areas directly above spaces where animals were kept, creating primitive but effective underfloor heating. Strategic sleep. Positioning. Medieval families almost certainly coordinated sleeping positions for maximum warmth sharing. The most vulnerable family members, young children and elderly, would typically be placed in the warmest center positions, with adults forming protective barriers against drafts. While detailed, choreographed rotation schedules are probably modern embellishment, the basic principle of adjusting positions throughout the night for optimal heat sharing is just common sense that would have been widely practiced. Medieval winter fashion. Medieval winter clothing was far more sophisticated than Hollywood suggests. Wool was the foundation of cold weather survival, and peasants often wore multiple layers, sometimes 4 or 5, each serving a specific purpose. Crucially, they often avoided washing wool garments during winter because this removed natural lanolin, which provided water resistance. Medieval texts confirm this practice with advice like, "A clean wool cloak is a cold wool cloak." Modern laboratory tests on preserved medieval garments show that unwashed wool retained significantly better water resistance than washed versions. They understood practical chemistry even without formal scientific knowledge. Layered defense. Textile archaeology reveals that medieval layering systems were quite sophisticated. Inner layers were soft and thin, while outer layers became progressively thicker and more wind-resistant. The weaving patterns even varied between layers to optimize different functions: inner layers for comfort, outer layers for protection. Modern testing shows these layering systems created effective air pockets that trapped heat comparably to some modern insulation materials, though obviously not reaching contemporary technical standards. Nature's insulation. Peasants in colder regions often stuffed their clothing with dried moss, straw, or other organic materials for extra insulation. Different types of moss had different properties, some naturally antimicrobial, others better for air trapping. Manor records do mention occasional disputes over access to good moss-gathering locations, showing how valuable these natural resources were for winter survival. Modern analysis confirms that some moss varieties provided insulation properties approaching those of early synthetic materials. Medieval waterproofing. Treating wool clothing with animal fat for water resistance was standard practice, backed by surviving medieval recipes. Common mixtures included sheep fat with pine sap or other tree resins, creating surprisingly effective waterproof coatings. Modern recreations of these formulas show they could maintain water resistance for several months, though they required periodic reapplication and definitely affected the garment's aroma. The nettle innovation. While linen undergarments were ideal, they were expensive. Many peasants used nettle fibers blended with wool for base layers. These scratchy but effective garments could wick moisture away from the body almost as effectively as modern synthetic performance fabrics. Modern textile testing shows nettle wool blends achieved roughly 80% of the moisture-wicking efficiency of contemporary athletic wear, not bad for medieval technology. Functional fashion. Medieval winter clothing featured genuinely functional design elements. Hoods had multiple adjustable panels for wind protection. Shoes were often pointed to minimize ground contact and reduce heat loss through the feet. Archaeological evidence supports these design choices as practical rather than purely aesthetic. Every element of winter clothing was optimized for survival rather than appearance. Medieval wardrobe management. Clothing care was sophisticated, involving storage in wooden chests lined with aromatic herbs that naturally repelled insects while providing some antimicrobial protection. The herb selections weren't random. Medieval people chose combinations that are now known to have genuine preservative properties. Seasonal clothing changes followed natural indicators rather than calendar dates. Medieval records describe watching for specific environmental signs like bird migration patterns or plant changes to determine when to switch to winter gear, folk wisdom that modern meteorologists have found remarkably accurate for predicting seasonal shifts. Community clothing production. Winter clothing preparation was often a community effort. Villages would organize group spinning and sewing sessions that served dual purposes, completing essential work while providing shared body heat that reduced firewood consumption. These communal work sessions could raise room temperatures noticeably while ensuring everyone had adequate winter clothing, efficient resource management that modern communities might find worth emulating. Livestock as living heaters. Bringing livestock indoors during winter was absolutely standard practice, especially in Northern European longhouse traditions. Cows, sheep, chickens, and pigs provided significant heating benefits. A single cow could raise room temperature by several degrees Celsius. Modern reconstructions suggest that strategic livestock placement could increase interior temperatures by up to 10 degrees in optimal conditions, though this varied greatly depending on house size, animal numbers, and weather conditions. Animal heat mathematics. Medieval communities understood animal heating value intuitively. Manor records suggest they roughly calculated that one cow provided heating equivalent to multiple sheep or many chickens, folk mathematics that modern thermodynamic analysis has found surprisingly accurate. These weren't random arrangements, but careful calculations about which animals provided the most heat for the space and feed they required. The livestock greenhouse effect. Animals provided more than just body heat. Their respiration created humidity that helped prevent extremely dry air while maintaining warmer temperatures. This primitive greenhouse effect helped preserve wooden structures and provided more comfortable living conditions. Modern environmental studies of reconstructed medieval homes confirm that animal-warmed spaces maintained humidity levels that were healthier for both humans and buildings than purely heated dry air. Medieval HVAC. Archaeological evidence shows that medieval homes often featured raised platforms and specialized areas designed to maximize heat distribution from livestock. Some designs positioned cattle so their breath created warm air currents flowing toward human sleeping areas. While calling them medieval HVAC engineers is playful exaggeration, these arrangements do show sophisticated understanding of airflow and heat distribution principles. Livestock disputes. Manor court records document genuine disputes over animal sharing arrangements, especially regarding prized cattle that provided premium heating. Villages took these matters seriously because inadequate heating could literally mean death. While formal animal heat assessment positions are probably exaggerated, communities did develop informal but systematic ways to fairly distribute heating resources among households. Heat by design. Medieval floor plans show evidence of strategic thinking about heat distribution. Animal areas were positioned to take advantage of natural convection currents, with warm air rising from livestock areas to human living spaces. Modern airflow analysis of preserved medieval sites confirms these arrangements were effective, achieving significant heating improvements through simple but intelligent design. Waste to warmth. The composting bedding systems used for livestock served multiple purposes: managing waste, creating additional heat through decomposition, and producing fertilizer for spring planting. The composting process could add extra degrees of warmth from below while handling sanitation needs. While the specific chemistry wasn't understood, the practical benefits were clear and well documented in agricultural records. Feeding systems. Archaeological evidence shows medieval homes often featured ingenious feeding systems, chutes, hatches, and rotating feed boxes that allowed animal care without constantly opening doors and losing warm air. These medieval airlock systems demonstrate sophisticated thinking about energy conservation, reducing heat loss while maintaining necessary animal care routines. Calculating comfort. Some manor records include guidelines linking livestock numbers to household size for optimal heating, showing medieval communities understood the mathematics of survival heating. Modern analysis suggests their intuitive calculations were quite accurate for their conditions. Community heating strategy. Medieval winter preparation was organized community effort, often beginning in midsummer. Villages appointed coordinators for essential tasks like firewood collection, food storage, and heating resource distribution. Archaeological evidence and manor records confirm that successful winter survival required village-wide cooperation and advanced planning. Firewood democracy. Firewood collection followed sophisticated rotation systems with different families assigned specific roles, cutting, hauling, stacking, that rotated to prevent anyone from getting stuck with the hardest jobs in the worst weather. Social enforcement mechanisms, including community pressure and minor penalties, ensured everyone contributed fairly to shared survival resources. The village shield. Communal halls served as village-wide heating centers, strategically positioned to block prevailing winds while providing shared warmth during the coldest periods. Some archaeological sites show evidence of double-door entry systems that minimized heat loss. These buildings weren't just meeting spaces, but essential survival infrastructure for the entire community. Weather monitoring. Villages developed practical weather monitoring systems using simple but effective indicators like water freezing rates in clay containers. While not scientific by modern standards, these methods provided useful local weather information. Folk wisdom about natural weather signs, bird behavior, plant changes, atmospheric conditions has proven remarkably accurate when studied by modern meteorologists. Shared warmth mathematics. Medieval communities understood that group gatherings could significantly raise temperatures in confined spaces. Large meetings during the coldest weather served both social and heating functions. Historical records show villages sometimes scheduled important community business for the coldest days, specifically to take advantage of shared body heat benefits. Sacred warmth. Medieval churches, especially monasteries, often featured dedicated warming rooms called calefactories, where the most vulnerable community members could shelter during extreme cold. These spaces were carefully managed to provide maximum benefit with available fuel resources. Church records document systematic approaches to providing warmth for those who couldn't adequately heat their own homes. Baking efficiency. Communal baking days represented sophisticated energy management, with villages coordinating oven use in sequences that maximized heat utilization while minimizing fuel consumption. The shared heat from large baking operations could warm surrounding spaces significantly. Modern analysis suggests these coordinated systems achieved substantial fuel savings compared to individual household baking. Local innovation. Medieval communities developed location-specific survival innovations based on available resources and local conditions. Some built heated underground tunnels between buildings. Others used hot stones from communal ovens as portable warmers. The diversity of medieval heating solutions shows remarkable creativity and adaptation to local circumstances. Medieval social safety nets. Villages maintained detailed awareness of which families might struggle during winter, elderly households, new mothers, families with sick members, and organized systematic support networks to help them survive. This wasn't just charity, but practical survival strategy. Community survival meant no one could be left to freeze without risking everyone's well-being. The ultimate lesson: medieval peasants created something modern society sometimes forgets: systems where individual survival was inseparable from community survival. Every heating innovation, every food storage technique, every shared resource was part of a comprehensive approach to getting everyone through winter alive. They didn't have our technology, but they had something equally valuable: the deep understanding that survival wasn't a solo mission. When the cold came, they faced it together and conquered it together. No thermostats, no central heating, no electric blankets, just human ingenuity, community cooperation, and the determination to see another spring. Maybe we could learn something from their approach to surviving the tough times.